Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Hi, thanks for tuning in again to Armor of God. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully, you'll be edified with what we've put together in this video. Anyway, what I'd like to do in this video is to cover about the occult. And as we have covered many times before about the danger of someone dabbling with the occult, this time we're going to cover about the love potion. And there's a lecture done by Father Chad Ripperger before where he talked about the 5 generals of hell. And one of the 5 demons that he mentioned, there is actually the demon that's in the love potion. Let me share you a very short clip of Father Ripperger talking about the 5 generals.
Underneath Satan, there are what we call the 5 generals. The 5 generals are the 5 demons that are immediately hierarchically underneath Satan, and they are the ones who execute his plans. In some cases, they call it the table, because it's basically they get to divide up certain things. Then what happens is the culture, the next 3 demons show up. The first is Asmodeus. He's the demon of homosexuality in men.
Sorry I can't share the whole thing here, but if you'd like to listen to the whole thing, there's a link to the description box below. Anyway, what I'd like to do instead is share Father Winston's explanation in regards to the love potion. Father Winston is an exorcist based in the Philippines, and some of you might be thinking, is there any relevance sharing this information here? Well, to begin with, the love potion isn't only unique to the Philippines. When I did a quick search on the internet, there are plenty of videos out there teaching people how to do the love potion. And just to give you a little bit more background into this whole occult thing, I'd like to share this very short video here of someone interviewing an occult practitioner in Singapore. Although this video here isn't exactly on the love potion, but instead the so-called wealth-fetching ritual.
Let me be very, very frank with you. In my room, there's always certain entities around. Always. So that is the wealth-fetching ritual. We will do that here. Yantra that I draw on my palm after applying certain blessed oil and putting gold flake there. Then I'll chant a certain mantra. It's supposed to invite wealth and prosperity into your life through the blessings of Mata Lakshmi or the goddess of wealth. There's a needle involved. Om Shri Lakshmi Narayana Namo, Om Yakshiraj Kuberaya Namo, Om Shri. Okay, now just follow me like this, rub your hands like this, 3 times, and do it like this.
Anyway, here's the clip of Father Winston's explanation.
How are curses usually done? And how does it operate? As to method, there is the direct and the indirect. When we talk about direct curses, the curse is introduced to the intended victim through an object that would touch the body of the person, such as by way of cursed food or drink. And gayuma or love potion is an example of a direct form of a curse. And there is also the indirect, where the curse is performed in an object that represents the victim, such as a voodoo doll. Curses are done by puncture and torture, using pins, nails, hammer, blade, fire, ice, insects, bugs, worms, or by tying or binding with laces, knots, bridles, ribbons, bands, hoops, chains, or by putrefaction, burying the object, throwing it to the sea where it cannot be found. The cursed object is symbolic of the victim, and at times the cursed object is an animal sacrificed to the demon that would deliver the curse. By malediction, wishing ill directly upon the person or on a photo or a symbol of that person. And by satanic rite, using a satanic cult or black mass performed with the purpose of inflicting mortal harm on the intended victim. As to means, with hexes and spells, puppets, or meat with pins, bones of the dead, blood, toads, chickens, insects, or with cursed objects through gifts, plants, pillows, dolls, ribbons, talismans. With an evil eye, a touch of the hand, an embrace, a breath, with a telephone, whether in silence, a word, a breath, or something else. With a telephone, whether in silence, a word, a breath, or something else, no one is answering, but you can only hear a breath or sometimes a mumbling. Gayuma or love, amorous potions, why are they reprehensible in the eyes of Almighty God? The gayuma is a nefarious or evil potion intended to bind the person of amorous interest to self. And by doing so, you destroy any existing love relationship of that person to another by putting a potion, a love potion on the food or drink of the intended victim. The effect of the potion is temporary but becomes permanent when sexual intimacy occurs, as it creates an unholy soul tie due to immoral sexual relationship between two people. The demon that binds them because of this immoral sexual relationship is the demon Asmodeus, the demon of violent lust. So you have the demon, the occult demon, present in the potion, and at the same time, the sexual relationship that is immoral binds them both. And this demon would claim ownership of the person who bewitched through a potion the object of his or her love.
Well, that is all on the love potions in this video. And now as for the following clip, I'd like to share this one from Father Daniel Reehil as he talks about one of common tactics of the enemy in spiritual warfare.
People are getting very fatigued, very worn out, and tired, just a general sense of being very tired all the time, exhausted in some cases. This, you may not know this, but this is a tactic of the enemy in spiritual warfare, to wear down God's children to the point where they have no energy and are left quite impotent in doing the things they need to be doing for the kingdom of God. Overcoming weariness and fatigue, particularly spiritual weariness and fatigue, which so many people are suffering from. And that, if left unchecked, can lead to despair, which then takes a person out completely. So you don't want to ever get to that point. So I too suffer from this. You know, it's not uncommon for exorcists to be often very weary and fatigued, particularly before we do ministry to deliver a demon. I know for myself and for several of my fellow exorcists that I'm friends with, there's telltale signs that happen that we can tell what's coming, the degree of difficulty in the exorcism. And the day before the exorcism, if it's a high-powered spirit, I get incredibly exhausted. And I know two of my friends have the same problem. But it's also kind of a gift because it alerts us to the fact that we're going into a strong battle. And it's not us who are fighting it. It's God and his angels, but we're the vessel that brings the grace. But it's right now, you know, the world is filled with demonic spirits and good angels, I should say, too. But they've been, for whatever reason, they seem to have more power than they did even just a few years ago. And so they're very busy knocking people off their game, so to speak. So, when you wake up in the morning, if you start the day feeling exhausted, you know you have a problem. And so it's all the more important that you begin your day with prayer. And I know for myself, even like to this morning, I didn't feel great when I woke up. I lifted too much at the gym yesterday and I'm very sore. But I know what that's from. I know that was a result of the weights. But I also was just not feeling completely energetic. This tells me you need to get to the church even earlier than usual. And so I get up around 4:30 and I'm in the church by 6 at the latest. And as soon as I pray the first rosary, it lifts off me this weariness, this fatigue, this heaviness. And that's how I know it's a spiritual dilemma and not a physical one. And so when you're experiencing this kind of weariness and fatigue, you have to go into prayer particularly if it's a spiritual problem. And you won't know that until you do pray. Now, even if it's a physical problem, the prayer isn't going to hurt you, and it's certainly not going to go wasted. So this works in all situations. People who tell me they have trouble going to the church to pray, you have to realize you're in a battle, and the enemy is trying to keep you away from God, trying to keep you away from prayer, trying to keep you away from the Blessed Sacrament. And so if you get derailed day in and day out, and this is the one area of your life that you cannot keep these appointments with God, you know that is a result of spiritual attack. We have to be a people who are persevering to get to God and to have this deep relationship with Him. So this is so important. Spiritual warfare is exhausting. Now, you must realize the enemy, his number one tactic is to keep us in a state of weariness, especially if he thinks that our weariness will prevent us from getting up and doing the very thing God has called us to do. Weariness is one of his most well-known strategies for those who work in spiritual warfare. I think priests get this more than most people because it's what we do day in and day out. The confessional is restoring people to God. That's warfare happening. We're taking back from the enemy, and we're delivering people over to God. And bringing Jesus down in the Blessed Sacrament is also, the devil would look at that as an act of warfare. If you're praying the Mass devoutly and reverently, that'll have profound effects of grace on the parishioners of your parish, and the enemy won't like that. He'll want you to pray. If they were the priest, he would want you to pray the Mass sloppily, unprepared, rushed, because that will give the impression that nothing special is happening, and over time people will drift away because they'll think this is nothing different than what happens in the Baptist church or any other church, and we can go anywhere we want. Let's go somewhere that has better music. It's all the same.
And now for the second part of this video. Again, we'd like to continue with the visions of Blessed Anne Catherine here. Thank you again for all your feedbacks in regards to this segment, and we're truly enjoying sharing them with you as well.
On another day, as he knelt in the grotto praying, I beheld the devil in a glittering robe, borne, as it were, through the air up the steepest and highest side of the rock. This precipitous, inaccessible side faced to the east. In it were some apertures opening into the grotto. Jesus glanced not toward the devil, who was now intent on passing himself off for an angel. But he was a poor imitation, for the light that enveloped him was far from transparent. It looked as if it had been smeared on, and his robe was stiff and harsh, while those of the angels are soft and light and transparent. Hovering at the entrance of the grotto, the devil spoke, I have been sent by thy Father to console thee. Jesus turned not toward him. Then the devil flew around to the steep, inaccessible side of the grotto, and peering in through one of the apertures, called to Jesus to witness a proof of his angelic nature, since he could hover there without support. But Jesus noticed him not. Seeing himself foiled in every attempt, the devil became quite horrible, and made as if he would seize Jesus in his claws through the aperture. His figure grew still more frightful, and he vanished. Jesus looked not after him. Then I asked myself how it was that Christ's divinity remained so concealed from the devil, and I received the following instruction. I understood clearly that it was the most incomprehensible advantage for men that neither they nor the devil knew of Christ's divinity, and that they were thereby to learn how to exercise faith. The Lord said one word to me that I still remember. Man, said he, knew not that the serpent tempting him was the devil. In like manner, the devil was not to know that he who redeemed man was God. I saw, too, that the divinity of Christ was not made known to the devil until the moment in which he freed the souls from limbo. On one of the subsequent days, I saw the devil under the form of a distinguished man of Jerusalem. He approached the cave in which Jesus was praying and told him that sympathy had urged him to come to him, for he felt assured that he was called to give freedom to the Jewish nation. Then he related all the reports, all the discussions rife in Jerusalem on his account, and told him that he had come to offer his support in the good cause. He was one of Herod's officers, he said. Jesus might unhesitatingly accompany him back to Jerusalem, might even take up his abode in Herod's palace, where he could lie concealed, gather his followers around him, and set his undertaking on foot. And he urged him to return with him at once. The pretended officer laid his proposal before Jesus in a multiplicity of words. Jesus looked not toward him, but continued earnestly to pray. Then I saw the devil retreating, his form becoming frightful, fire and smoke bursting from his nostrils, until at last he vanished. When Jesus began to hunger, and especially to thirst, the devil appeared in the form of a pious hermit, and exclaimed, I am so hungry. I pray thee, give me of the fruits growing here on the mountain outside thy grotto. I would pluck none of it without asking the owner. Pretending that he took Jesus for the owner, then let us sit together and talk of good things. Not at the entrance of the grotto, but on the opposite side, that is, toward the east, and at a little distance, grew figs and berries and another kind of fruit, something like nuts, though with soft shells like those of the medlar. Jesus answered the false hermit, Depart from me, thou art from the very beginning liar. Harm not the fruit. Then I saw the devil as a little somber figure hurrying off, a black vapor exhaling from him. But he returned again in the form of a traveler, and asked Jesus for permission to eat of the fine grapes growing nearby, because they were so good for thirst. But Jesus gave him no answer, did not even look at him. On the following day, the devil tempted Jesus again on the same head, only this time it was with a spring instead of fruit. Then the devil appeared to Jesus in the grotto as a magician and philosopher. He told him that he had come to him as to a wise man, and that he would show him that he too could exhibit marvels. Then he showed him hanging on his hand a piece of apparatus like a globe, or perhaps still more like a birdcage. Jesus would not look at the tempter, much less into the globe as the devil desired, but turning his back on him, he left the grotto. I saw that a look into Satan's raree show disclosed the most magnificent scenes from nature, lovely pleasure gardens full of shady groves, cool fountains, richly laden fruit trees, luscious grapes, etc. All seemed to be within one's reach, and all was constantly dissolving into ever more beautiful, more enticing scenes. Jesus turned his back on the devil, and he vanished. This was another temptation to interrupt the fast of Jesus, who now began to thirst and to experience the pangs of hunger. The devil did not yet know what to think of him. He was aware, it is true, of the prophecies relating to Jesus, and he felt that Jesus exercised power over himself, but he did not yet know that Jesus was God. He did not know that even that Jesus was the Messiah, whose advent he so dreaded, since he beheld Jesus fasting, hungering, enduring temptation, since he saw Jesus so poor, suffering in so many ways, in a word, since he saw Jesus in all things so like an ordinary man. In this the devil was as blind as the Pharisees. He looked upon Jesus as a holy man whom temptation might lead to a fall. Jesus was now suffering from hunger and thirst. I saw him several times at the entrance of the grotto. Toward evening one day, the devil in the form of a large, powerful man ascended the mountain. He had furnished himself below with 2 stones as long as little rolls, but square at the ends, which as he mounted, he molded into the perfect appearance of bread. There was something more horrible than usual about him when he stepped into the grotto to Jesus. In each hand he held one of the stones, and his words were to this effect: Thou art right not to eat of the fruit, for it only excites an appetite. But if thou art the beloved Son of God, over whom the Spirit came at baptism, behold, I have made these stones look like unto bread. Do thou change them into bread. Jesus glanced not toward him, but I heard him utter these words only, Man lives not by bread. These were the only words that I caught distinctly. Then the devil became perfectly horrible. He stretched out his talons as if to seize Jesus, at which action I saw the stones resting on his arms, and fled. Toward evening of the following day, I saw the devil in the form of a majestic angel sweeping down toward Jesus with a noise like the rushing wind. He was clad in a sort of military dress, such as I have seen St. Michael wear. But in the midst of his greatest splendor, one might detect something sinister and horrible. He addressed boasting words to Jesus, something in this strain: "I will show thee who I am and what I can do, and how the angels bear me up in their hands. Look yonder, there is Jerusalem. Behold the temple. I shall place thee upon its highest pinnacle. Then do thou show what thou canst do, and see whether the angels will carry thee down." While the devil thus spoke and pointed out Jerusalem and the temple, I seemed to see them both quite near, just in front of the mountain. But I think that it was only an illusion. Jesus made no reply, and the devil seized him by the shoulders and bore him through the air. He flew low toward Jerusalem and placed Jesus upon the highest point of one of the 4 towers that rose from the 4 corners of the temple, and which I had not before noticed. The tower to which the devil bore Jesus was on the west side toward Zion and opposite the citadel Antonia. The mount upon which the temple stood was very steep on that side. The towers were like prisons, and in one of them were kept the costly garments of the high priest. The roofs of these towers were flat, so that one could walk on them, but from the center rose a hollow, conical turret capped by a large sphere, upon which there was a standing room for 2. From that position one could view the whole temple below. It was on the loftiest point of the tower that the devil placed Jesus, who uttered no word. Then the devil flew to the ground and cried up to him, "If thou art the Son of God, show thy power and come down also. For it is written, He has given his angels charge over thee, and in their hands shall they bear thee up, lest perhaps thou dash thy foot against a stone." Jesus replied, "It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." The devil, in a fury, returned to Jesus, who said, "Make use of the power that hath been given thee." Then the devil seized Jesus fiercely by the shoulders and flew with Jesus over the desert toward Jericho. While standing on the tower, I noticed twilight in the western sky. This second flight appeared to me longer than the first. The devil was filled with rage and fury. He flew with Jesus now high, now low, reeling like one who would vent his rage if he could. He bore Jesus to the same mountain, 7 hours from Jerusalem, upon which Jesus had commenced his fast. I saw that the devil carried Jesus low over an old pine tree on the way. The devil flew with the Lord to the highest peak of the mountain and set him upon an overhanging, inaccessible crag much higher than the grotto. It was night, but while the devil pointed around, it grew bright, revealing the most wonderful regions in all parts of the world. The devil addressed Jesus in words something like these: "I know that thou art a great teacher, that thou art now about to gather disciples around thee and promulgate thy doctrines. Behold, all these magnificent countries, these mighty nations. Compare with them poor, little Judea, lying yonder. Go rather to these. I will deliver them over to thee, if kneeling down thou wilt adore me." By adoration, the devil meant that obeisance common among the Jews, and especially among the Pharisees, when supplicating favors from kings and great personages. This temptation of the devil was similar to that other one in which, under the guise of one of Herod's officers, he had sought to lure Jesus to take up his abode in the castle of Jerusalem, and had offered to assist him in his undertaking. It was similar in kind, though more extended in degree. As the devil pointed around, one saw first vast countries and seas, with their different cities, into which kings in regal pomp and magnificence, and followed by myriads of warriors, were triumphantly entering. As one gazed, these scenes became more and more distinct, until, at last, they seemed to be in the immediate vicinity. One looked down upon all their details, every scene, every nation differing in customs and manners, in splendor and magnificence. The devil pointed out in each the features of special attraction. He dwelt particularly upon those of a country whose inhabitants were unusually tall and magnificent looking. They were almost like giants. I think it was Persia. The devil advised Jesus to go there above all to teach. He showed him Palestine, but as a poor, little, insignificant place. This was a most wonderful vision, so extended, so clear, so grand and magnificent. The only words uttered by Jesus were, The Lord thy God shalt thou adore, and him only shalt thou serve. Depart from me, Satan. Then I saw the devil in an inexpressibly horrible form rise from the rock, cast himself into the abyss, and vanish as if the earth had swallowed him. At the same moment I beheld myriads of angels draw near to Jesus, bend low before him, take him up as if in their hands, float down gently with him to the rock, and into the grotto in which the 40 days' fast had been begun. There were 12 angelic spirits who appeared to be the leaders, and a definite number of assistants. I cannot now remember distinctly, but I think it was 72, and I feel that the whole vision was symbolical of the apostles and the disciples. And now was held in the grotto a grand celebration, one of triumph and thanksgiving, and a banquet was made ready. The interior of the grotto was adorned by the angels with garlands of vine leaves, from which depended a victor's crown, likewise of leaves, over the head of Jesus. The preparations were made rapidly, though with marvelous order and magnificence. All was resplendent, all was symbolical. Whatever was needed appeared instantly at hand and in its proper place. Next came the angels bearing a table, small at first, but which quickly increased in size, laden with celestial viands. The food and vessels were such as I have always seen on the heavenly tables, and I saw Jesus, the 12 chief spirits, and also the others partaking of refreshment. But there was no eating by the mouth, though still a real participation, a passing of the essence of the fruits into the partakers. All was spiritual. It was as if the interior signification of the aliments entered into the participants, bearing with it refreshment and strength. But it is inexpressible. At one end of the table stood a large, shining chalice with little cups around it, the whole similar to that which I have always seen in my visions of the institution of the Blessed Sacrament. But this that I now saw was immaterial, was larger. There was also a plate with thin discs of bread. I saw Jesus pouring something from the large chalice into the cups and dipping morsels of bread into it, which morsels and cups the angels took and carried away. With this the vision ended, and Jesus, going out from the grotto, went down toward the Jordan. The angels that ministered unto Jesus appeared under different forms and seemed to belong to different hierarchies. Those that, at the close of the banquet, bore away the cups of wine and morsels of bread were clothed in priestly raiment. I saw at the instant of their disappearance all kinds of supernatural consolation descending upon the friends of Jesus, those of his own time and those of after ages. I saw Jesus appearing in vision to the Blessed Virgin then at Cana to comfort and strengthen her. I saw Lazarus and Martha wonderfully touched while their hearts grew warm with the love of Jesus. I saw Mary the Silent actually fed with the gifts from the table of the Lord. I saw at the instant of their disappearance all kinds of supernatural consolation descending upon the friends of Jesus, those of his own time and those of after ages. I saw Jesus appearing in vision to the Blessed Virgin then at Cana to comfort and strengthen her. I saw Lazarus and Martha wonderfully touched while their hearts grew warm with the love of Jesus. Magdalene, too, was wonderfully agitated. She was at the time busied with finery for some amusement. Suddenly, anxiety about her life seized upon her, and a longing rose in her soul to be freed from the chains that bound her. She cast the finery from her hands, but was laughed at by those around her. I saw many of the future apostles consoled, their hearts filled with heavenly desires. I saw Nathanael in his home, thinking of all that he had heard of Jesus, of the deep impression he had made upon him, and of how he had cast it out of his mind. Peter, Andrew, and all the others were, as I saw, strengthened and consoled. This was a most wonderful vision.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. Remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.